15 years of marriage boils down to paperwork. You think it is about memories or children or the house you bought when the market was down, but it is not. It is about who signs for you when you cannot speak. It is about who holds the power of attorney. It is about the name typed into the black line next to the words emergency contact. I learned this on a Tuesday afternoon inside a hospital waiting room that smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. The receptionist did not look up when she handed me the clipboard. She just told me that due to HIPAA regulations, she could not give me details on my wife's condition until the primary contact arrived. I told her I was the husband. I told her I was the primary contact. She turned the computer screen toward me and pointed a manicured finger at a name that was not mine. That was the moment the ground vanished. That was the moment I realized the last 6 months of my life had been a lie designed to keep me quiet while she replaced me. 6 months earlier, Linda stood in our kitchen and told me she needed space. We had just finished a dinner of roast chicken and potatoes, a meal we had eaten 1,000 times. The dishwasher was humming. The television was on in the other room, playing the evening news. It was a normal Tuesday. I was thinking about my upcoming performance review at the plant. Linda wiped the counter with a sponge, moving in small circular motions. She did not look at me. She said she felt suffocated. She said she had lost herself somewhere between raising our 2 sons and managing the household. She said she needed to live apart for a while to find out who Linda was when she wasn't a wife or a mother. I was blindsided. We were not fighting. There were no screaming matches. We had intimacy issues like any couple in their 50s, but nothing that signaled the end. I asked if there was someone else. She looked me in the eye and swore on our children's lives that there was no one. She said this was entirely internal. She needed to rent a small apartment in town, just for a few months, a trial separation to reset the clock. She proposed we attend counseling every week. She promised we would still have Sunday dinner as a family. She made it sound like a maintenance plan for a car that had high mileage. I agreed. I wanted to be the supportive husband. I wanted to show her that I respected her autonomy. I helped her move her boxes into a 1-bedroom apartment near the library. I set up her internet. I carried her heavy winter coats up the stairs. I kissed her on the cheek at the door and told her I would wait as long as she needed. I drove home to an empty house that felt too big and too quiet. I thought I was being noble. I thought I was fighting for my marriage by letting it breathe. I was a fool. The first month was textbook separation. We met for therapy on Thursdays. We talked about communication styles and love languages. The therapist, a woman named Dr. Evans, nodded a lot and told me I needed to give Linda room to grow. I listened. I stopped texting her every day. I waited for her to initiate contact. Sunday dinners were awkward. Linda would come over, eat quickly, and leave before dessert. She seemed distracted. She checked her phone constantly, keeping the screen face down on the table. When I asked about her week, she gave vague answers about reading at the park or taking long walks. By the 3rd month, the dynamic shifted. The therapy sessions became hostile. Linda stopped talking about finding herself and started talking about my flaws. She brought up grievances from 10 years ago. She complained about the way I handled finances in 2014. She brought up the time I forgot her mother's birthday in 2009. It felt like she was building a case file rather than seeking resolution. I took it. I apologized. I tried to change. I started doing laundry the way she liked, even though she wasn't there to see it. I fixed the squeaky step on the back deck she had hated for years. Then came the money. I noticed withdrawals from our joint savings account. $500 here, $300 there. It wasn't enough to trigger a fraud alert, but it was enough to drain the cushion we had built for a bathroom renovation. When I asked her about it, she got defensive. She said living alone was expensive. She said she needed new clothes for her new identity. I let it slide. I earned a good salary as a logistics manager. I could absorb the cost if it meant getting my wife back. The turning point was the car insurance bill. It arrived at the house, but Linda had taken the sedan. I opened the envelope to file it and noticed the mileage. She had put 4,000 miles on the car in 3 months. Her apartment was 2 miles from her job at the bookstore. The math didn't work. I called her. She didn't answer. I texted. She replied hours later saying she had been taking long drives in the country to clear her head. I started to get suspicious. I am not a man who snoops, but the mileage gnawed at me. I drove past her apartment complex one evening after work. Her car was not there. It was 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. I drove past again at 11 p.m. Still empty. The next morning, I called her work. The manager told me Linda had switched to part-time status 2 months ago. She only worked mornings now. Linda had told me she was working extra shifts to pay for the apartment. I confronted her at our next therapy session. I laid out the mileage and the job status. Linda turned cold. She told Dr. Evans that I was stalking her. She said this was exactly why she needed space, because I was controlling and paranoid. Dr. Evans looked at me with disappointment. I felt like the villain. I backed down. I apologized for checking on her. I told her I was just worried. Linda accepted the apology with a smug look that I should have recognized as contempt. Then came the phone call. It was a Tuesday, exactly 6 months after she moved out. I was at work, supervising a shipment on the loading dock. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't know. A frantic voice on the other line identified herself as a nurse from St. Jude's Hospital. She said Linda had been in a collision. She was conscious but disoriented. They were running tests. I dropped everything. I left my shift supervisor in charge and drove 20 miles over the speed limit to the hospital. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I was terrified she was hurt. I was terrified I would lose her before we fixed things. I ran into the emergency room entrance and slammed my hands on the reception desk. That brings us back to the clipboard. The receptionist told me to sit down. She said the primary contact had already been notified and was on his way. I asked who it was. She refused to say. I stood there, arguing that I was the legal husband. I pulled out my license. I showed her the address matching Linda's old address on file. The receptionist finally softened. She turned the screen. Emergency contact, Robert Holloway. Relationship, fiancé. Fiancé. The word hung in the air like smoke. I stared at the screen. I knew the name. Robert Holloway was the owner of the gym Linda had joined a year ago. He was a man I had met at a Christmas party. He was tall, divorced, and drove a Corvette. I remembered Linda making fun of his tan. I sat down in the plastic chair. The adrenaline drained out of me, replaced by a cold, heavy clarify. There was no finding herself. There was no space. There was just Robert. 10 minutes later, the automatic doors slid open. Robert Holloway walked in. He looked frantic. He was wearing a tight polo shirt and expensive sunglasses. He rushed to the desk. The receptionist smiled at him and pointed him toward the double doors. He didn't see me sitting in the corner. He walked right past me. I watched him disappear into the back to comfort my wife. I stood up. I walked out of the hospital. I did not go to her room. I did not cause a scene. I got into my truck and drove to the bank. The sadness was gone. It was replaced by a tactical focus I used at work to solve supply chain disasters. I needed to secure the perimeter. I walked into the bank branch manager's office. I had known him for 10 years. I told him I needed to freeze the joint accounts immediately due to a marital dispute. He saw the look on my face and processed the paperwork. I transferred half of the remaining balance into a new account solely in my name. I canceled the credit cards she was an authorized user on. Then I drove to her apartment. I had a key. She had given it to me in case of emergencies. I figured this counted. I let myself in. The place did not look like a woman finding herself. It looked like a bachelor pad. There were men's shoes by the door, large size. There was a razor in the bathroom that wasn't hers, and on the kitchen counter, there was a stack of mail. I flipped through it. There were brochures for condos in Florida, there were printouts of divorce lawyers, and there was a notebook. Linda's handwriting. I opened it. It was a timeline. The dates went back 2 years. Meet Rob was circled in red from 18 months ago. Start separation talk was dated 7 months ago. Move out was dated 6 months ago. File papers was dated for next month. She had planned the whole thing. The therapy was a stall tactic. The space was a way to test drive her new life with Robert while I paid the bills. She was waiting for her year-end bonus from her company and for our youngest son to turn 18 next month, so custody wouldn't be an issue. I took the notebook. I took photos of the apartment, the men's clothes, the toiletries. I recorded a video walking through the space. Then I left. I went home and called a locksmith. I had every lock in the house changed. I called a lawyer I knew from my Rotary Club. He was a shark named Miller. I told Miller everything. I sent him the photos. I told him about the emergency contact form at the hospital. Miller laughed a dry, humorless laugh. He said we had her dead to rights on adultery and misuse of marital funds. In our state, that mattered. I spent that night packing her remaining things at the house. I boxed up her clothes, her books, her grandmother's china. I put everything in the garage. I didn't smash anything. I didn't burn anything. I was methodical. I was erasing her from the house just as she had erased me from that form. The next morning, my phone blew up. Linda was out of the hospital, minor concussion and a broken wrist. She was at the pharmacy trying to pay for her prescription, and the card was declined. She called me. I let it go to voicemail. She texted, "Card isn't working, call me." I waited an hour. Then I sent a single text. "I know about Robert. I saw the emergency contact form. Talk to my lawyer." The silence that followed was deafening. She didn't text back. 2 hours later, Robert's car pulled into my driveway. I was watching from the living room window. Linda got out. Her arm was in a sling. She looked pale. Robert stayed in the car. She walked to the front door and tried her key. It didn't turn. She tried again. She rattled the handle. She rang the doorbell. I opened the door, but I left the storm door locked. I stood there looking at her. "Let me in, Mark," she said. Her voice was shaky. "No," I said. "This is my house," she snapped. The sweetness of the confused wife was gone. This was the real Linda. "It's marital property," I said. "You abandoned it 6 months ago to live with your fiancé. My lawyer will be in touch about when you can collect your boxes from the garage, but you aren't coming inside." "You can't do this!" she screamed. "I'm injured." "Call Robert," I said. "He's your emergency contact. Let him take care of you." I saw the color drain from her face. She looked back at the Corvette. Robert was looking at his phone, ignoring her. He didn't want to deal with the husband. He wanted the fun, not the fallout. "Mark, please," she said. "It's not what you think. I just put his name down because he was the only one who knew I was driving." "Stop," I said. "I went to the apartment, Linda. I saw the notebook. I know you've been planning this for 2 years. I know you spent our renovation money on weekend trips with him. It's over." She started to cry. It wasn't the soft crying she used in therapy. It was the ugly, panicked crying of someone whose plan had exploded. "I made a mistake," she sobbed. "I was confused. I want to come home." "You are home," I said, pointing to the driveway. "You made your choice. You wanted space. You have all the space in the world now." I closed the door and locked the deadbolt. I watched her walk back to the Corvette. She argued with Robert through the window. He looked annoyed. He unlocked the door and she got in. They drove away. The next few months were a legal war. Miller, my lawyer, was brilliant. He used the emergency contact form as Exhibit A. He used the notebook I found. He subpoenaed Robert's bank records to prove Linda had been receiving gifts from him while using our joint funds to pay for her life. Linda tried to fight for the house. She tried to fight for alimony. But the evidence painted a clear picture of premeditated abandonment and financial infidelity. The judge was a stern woman who didn't appreciate the fact that Linda had lied in her courtroom about the timeline of the relationship. Robert didn't stick around. Once the financial spigot turned off and the drama ramped up, the Corvette disappeared. I heard from a mutual friend that he broke up with Linda 2 months after the hospital incident. He told her she came with too much baggage. Linda tried to reach out to our sons. Our oldest, Mike, is 22. He told her to leave him out of it, but he refused to go to dinner with her. Our youngest, Sam, took it harder. He was angry at me for locking her out, but once I showed him the timeline, showed him that she was planning to leave the month he turned 18, he understood. He realized he was just a countdown clock to her. That broke him a little, and I hated her for that more than for the cheating. We settled the divorce 10 months later. I kept the house. I had to buy her out of her share of the equity, but Miller negotiated a severe reduction based on the marital funds she had misappropriated. I kept my pension. She got her car and the contents of the garage. The day the decree was signed, I sat in the kitchen. It was quiet. The dishwasher wasn't running. The TV wasn't on. I looked at the spot where she had stood when she asked for space. I drank a black coffee. I felt lonely. I won't lie about that. You don't erase 15 years without feeling the phantom limb. But I also felt clean. I had cut out the rot. I picked up a pen and a form from my HR department at work. It was the annual update for my benefits package. I scrolled down to the bottom, emergency contact. It had been Linda Miller for a decade and a half. I took the pen and scratched a line through her name. I didn't hesitate. I wrote Michael Miller and put my son's phone number. Then I added a secondary contact. My brother, Dave. I put the form in an envelope and sealed it. I walked to the mailbox at the end of the driveway. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn I had mowed for 15 years. A neighbor, Bob, was walking his dog. He waved. "How's it going, Mark?" he called out. "Good, Bob," I said. "Doing really good." And I meant it. I went back inside and made a steak. I ate it at the table. Then I called my brother. We talked for an hour about football and fishing. I didn't mention Linda. She was the past. She was a lesson. The next week I started changing the house. I painted the kitchen a dark blue that Linda would have hated. I bought a leather recliner she never would have allowed in the living room. I turned the guest room, her old office, into a gym. I started working out. I wasn't doing it for a revenge body. I was doing it because I wanted to be strong enough to carry my own life. One evening, 6 months post-divorce, the doorbell rang. It was raining hard. I opened the door. Linda was standing there. She looked older, tired. She wasn't wearing a coat. "Mark," she said, "can I come in? Just for a minute?" I looked at her. I looked for the woman I had married. I saw a stranger who had tried to bankrupt me emotionally and financially. "Why?" I asked. "I miss you," she said. "I miss us. Robert was a mistake. The apartment is awful. I'm lonely." "You're not lonely, Linda," I said. "You're just alone. There's a difference." "Please," she said. "We have 15 years. "We had 15 years, I corrected. "Then you took a year off to audition my replacement. You didn't get the part you wanted, so now you want your old role back." But I recast it. "You're seeing someone?" she asked, her voice sharp with jealousy. "No," I said. "I recast the role of Mark's priority. It's me now. I'm the priority." She stared at me. She didn't know what to say. She was used to the Mark who apologized for things he didn't do. She was used to the Mark who waited. That Mark died in a hospital waiting room. "Go home, Linda," I said. "I don't have a home," she whispered. "You have an apartment," I said, "and you have your space. Enjoy it." I closed the door. I didn't lock it this time. I didn't need to. I knew she wouldn't try the handle. I went back to the living room and sat in my leather chair. I picked up a book. I read until I fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up early. It was Saturday. I had a fishing trip planned with my sons. We were going up to the lake for the weekend. I packed the cooler. I checked the trailer hitch. Mike and Sam pulled up in Mike's truck. They looked happy, relieved. The tension of the last year had lifted from their shoulders, too. They didn't have to walk on eggshells around a mother who was secretly plotting an exit. They had their dad back. "Ready, old man?" Mike asked, grinning. "Born ready," I said. We drove out of the subdivision. As we passed the library, I saw Linda's car parked on the street. She was sitting in the driver's seat, just staring at the steering wheel. I didn't slow down. I didn't look back in the mirror. I turned the radio up. We hit the highway. The road was open. The engine hummed. I thought about the emergency contact form one last time. It's funny how a few lines of ink can define your worth. For 15 years, I thought my worth was being her husband. But when she erased me, she gave me a gift. She forced me to find my own name. I looked at my boys. If I had a heart attack right now, they would be the ones to answer the call. They would be the ones to make the decisions. And they would do it with love, not obligation. That was real. That was tangible. The marriage was a contract. The divorce was a termination. But the life I had now, that was mine. I took a deep breath. The air tasted cold and clean. "Hey, Dad," Sam said from the back seat. "You think we'll catch anything?" "Doesn't matter," I said. "We're fishing." And that was the truth. It didn't matter what we caught. It mattered that we were there. It mattered that I wasn't waiting by a silent phone. It mattered that I wasn't paying for an apartment I wasn't allowed to visit. I was free. The realization hit me harder than the betrayal had. Freedom isn't just about doing what you want. It's about not being responsible for someone who doesn't care about you. It's about not being the safety net for a trapeze artist who pushed you off the platform. I drove north. The city faded behind us. The trees got thicker. The road got windier. I felt the steering wheel under my hands. I was in control. I never heard from Linda again after that night in the rain. I heard from friends that she moved 2 towns over. She got a job at a department store. She dated a few guys, but nothing stuck. She was chasing a fantasy of youth and excitement that didn't exist. She had traded a solid foundation for a swamp, and now she was sinking. It wasn't my problem. 3 years later, I met a woman named Karen. She was a widow. She liked fishing. She liked silence. We didn't have a whirlwind romance. We had a slow, steady burn. We respected each other's scars. One day, we were filling out paperwork for a cruise we were taking together. The form asked for an emergency contact. I looked at Karen. She was writing. I glanced at her paper. Mark Miller, she had written. I smiled. I looked at my own paper. I wrote Karen Davis. It wasn't about dependency. It wasn't about power. It was about trust. It was about knowing that if the world went dark, this was the person who would bring the light. I took her hand. She squeezed it. Ready? She asked. Ready? I said. We handed the forms to the agent. We walked onto the ship. The ocean was vast and blue. The future was unwritten. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the space. I welcomed it. Because I wasn't filling it with lies anymore. I was filling it with life. I thought back to the hospital, to the clipboard, to the fiancé. It felt like a story about someone else, a cautionary tale I had read in a magazine. The anger was gone. The resentment was ash. I was just a man on a boat with a woman who knew my name, and that was enough. The cruise was 10 days. We visited islands, we ate too much, we laughed. On the last night, we stood on the deck watching the stars. The sky was endless. Thank you, I said. For what? Karen asked. For being my contact, I said. She laughed. You're weird, Mark. Yeah, I said. I am. But I knew what I meant. The next morning, we docked. We drove home. My house, my blue kitchen, my leather chair was waiting. It wasn't a shrine to a dead marriage. It was a home. I unpacked my bag. I put my laundry in the machine. I checked the mail. Just bills and flyers. No surprises. No secret bank statements. No hidden lives. Peace is expensive. It costs you everything you thought you knew. It costs you your comfort. It costs you your history. But once you pay the price, you own it. And nobody can take it away from you. I sat on my back deck. I watched the sun go down. I drank a beer. I was 55 years old. I had half my life left. And I wasn't going to waste a single second of it being someone's backup plan. I was the main event. I finished my beer. I went inside. I locked the door. Not to keep people out, but to keep my peace in. The phone rang. It was Mike. Hey, Dad, just checking in. I'm good, son, I said. Love you, Dad. Love you too. I hung up. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of me. And for the first time, I understood what space really meant. It wasn't distance. It was room. Room to breathe. Room to be. Room to heal. Linda had asked for space. I gave it to her. And in doing so, I found my own. She got the empty apartment. I got the world. Fair trade. I went to bed. I slept without dreaming. When I woke up, the sun was shining. I made coffee. I started my day. I was Mark Miller, and I was doing just fine. The end.